apparently being anti-Ubisoft makes you far right. We're going to be checking this out today. The video is by Hirohei. As always, sources are going to be in the description. While you're down there, like, favorite, share, not a whole shebang, subscribe. You know how it is. All right,
recap super quick. AC Shadows has been delayed to February 2025. Ubisoft,
which coincidentally is Black History Month and is hilarious.
Admits that Outlaws is underselling, and in a message released to investors, Ubisoft addresses a number of issues at the company and outlines some changes that they're going to try to help fix them. This following an internal probe also going on at Ubisoft to try.
If they had just made Star Wars Outlaws good, it wouldn't have been an issue. Star Wars Outlaws would have been better, in my opinion, if you could create your own character. I think people have been desperately waiting for a current gen Star Wars game where you can create your own character and it's not an MMORPG like the Old Republic. I would love to play a single player Star Wars RPG where I can create my own character, choose a class. I can be a Jedi, a bounty hunter, a Sith, you know, and then I follow a story. I'm gonna stop yapping because we're 26 seconds into the video, so.
Try and understand why the company has been failing so massively over the last number of years. And finally, Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot. Did I get the name right that time? Well, he's made a statement saying that Ubisoft really doesn't have an agenda, and this particular statement has actually enraged a number of armchair activists and similar type of journalists. That's what we're going to be going over in this video, as it should be very entertaining, so I hope you're ready, and let's enjoy. We start with Paul Tassi, who's responding to Stefan Totilo, who said, "From CEO, regarding polarized comments around Ubisoft, I want to reaffirm that we are an entertainment-first company, creating games for the broadest possible audience, and our goal is not to push any specific agenda."
You know, when you have things like Star Wars Outlaws, and you have Assassin's Creed Shadows? Yeah, Assassin's Creed Shadows, where you're priding yourself on the historical accuracy of your latest Assassin's Creed game, and for whatever reason, out of every historical Japanese character you could have taken, you chose to pick Yasuke, the one significant black person in Japan. Why? You had a litany of people you could have chosen, and you decided to choose Yasuke. So yeah, I understand why people are going to say you have an agenda.
We remain committed to creating games that everyone can enjoy. That being the statement from Yves that I mentioned earlier, and Paul Tassi responds saying, "It is embarrassing Ubisoft is admitting that they're actually rattled by the culture war stuff over Outlaws and Shadows." He had more to say than that, but before we get to that, let me share my opinion on this. Just simplifying all of these issues into culture war stuff seems like a very odd take by Paul Tassi, because this situation involves people in Japan talking about their country being disrespected, as they're also lied to by a massive corporation regarding their own history. But apparently to Paul Tassi, all of this is just culture war stuff.
Well, yeah, the best thing to do in a situation like that is 100% downplay and ignore the situation. Because the more attention you give to the situation, the more you talk about it, and the more you apologize for the situation, the more people are going to talk about it and not actually let you live it down, and it's going to continue being in the news cycle, kind of like Assassin's Creed Shadows. If they had just kept their mouth shut, one apology, be like, yo, we messed up, and then just not bring it up anymore. No more press conferences, no more interviews, no more commentaries on this entire topic, I don't think this would still be a talking point as it, well, it would be a talking point, it just wouldn't be as a big of a talking point as it is right now.
Now, if you're not familiar with Paul Tassi, he's often been criticized in gaming circles for numerous takes that he's made over the years that seem dismissive of the issues people have with things such as DEI. For example, back when Ubisoft issued their apology to the Japanese community, Paul Tassi had this to say: "When the hyper-forced pushback to your game is the not Japanese culture war talking point of you putting a DI samurai in your game, I would not engage with these."
What? When the hyper-focused pushback to your game is the not Japanese culture war talking point of you putting a DI samurai in your game, I would not engage with these people at all. It's a weirdly shaped sentence.
These people at all. So it also looks like he has a history of dismissing the issues that Japanese people have with AC Shadows. This is, of course, just one more example. I don't want to go through all this guy's tweets, just giving you a little bit more context. It's a truly bizarre thing how many armchair activist types and journalists, etc., are in complete denial about the failures of DEI. In my opinion, DI is largely something that companies have tried to use for profit motives, attempts to appeal to ESG funds, and things like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, just look at every company during Pride Month, right? All of your apps and stuff change their little logos to some pride flag. This year they have the pride flag with the trans flag melded together. It's like, oh, look at us, we're so inclusive. Unlike X company, we actually care about our users, and then as soon as July comes around, bam, all those apps go right back to normal. They don't care. They don't actually care about your rights or your orientations. They're not actual allies. But for whatever reason, people buy it up. People believe that these companies actually care. I don't know at what point in time we started viewing companies as like the paragons of virtue. Companies are entities made to make money. Money, root of all evil. Why would any company care about your orientation at all? And why do you believe that they care?
So whenever I see someone defending those sort of practices, to me they just come off as massive corporate bootlickers. Now, as DI has been failing and actually been costing these corporations more and more money in many cases, the topic comes up more and more, and we see more people criticizing that stuff, as well as more people like Paul Tassi seemingly attempting to dismiss those criticisms.
Another thing with the whole DEI thing, for example, Prototype 2. I was so happy when James Heller was the protagonist, because it was one of the first video games where I could play as a black person that wasn't just like a criminal or a rapper. He was a character in a bad situation that just happened to be black. He was not a black man in a bad situation. He was a person in a bad situation that just happened to be black. With DEI inserts, they're not people. They're tokens, right? You have your token black person, your token Asian person, your token Indian person that feed into the stereotypes. The amount of shows where you have an Asian family running a convenience store, or an Indian family with a gas station, or you have the black person, and you usually have two types of black people on TV, right? You have the really DI inserts. You have the really ghetto DI insert, or you have the whitewashed black person insert. And I'm just not a fan of it. I think diversity is fine as long as it makes sense. You know, you shouldn't be filming a show about Norway and have a colorful cast of people if we're talking about the historical importance of some little fishing village on the edge of Norway. That would be insane. But if you're shooting a show about, here's the people of Montreal. Hey, Montreal is a cultural melting pot. It is normal to have people from every kind of different background. If you're having a game happening in a historical time period long before international traveling, why would you have a diverse cast? Everyone should be homogen. Everyone should be homogen, because there has not been international travel yet. So DEI is fine as long as it makes sense. And unfortunately, in a lot of the media we consume today, DEI is nothing else but like, here's your token black person.
Another example of this, albeit perhaps to a lesser extent, were some of the takes that he was making during Concord, where he seemed to be
respected and illustrated game journalist Paul Tassi, I don't really feel like he's respected, but okay, is shocked and confused as to how Concord has such a low player base that can't even hit 1K. I'll tell you, the game is trash. Tries to blame Steam for glitching, insisting repeatedly that the game's unpopularity does not make sense. If you're gonna put me in the Guardians of the Galaxy universe, let me play as the Guardians of the Galaxy. If you put me in the Spider-Man universe, let me play as Spider-Man. If you put me in the Batman universe, let me play as Batman. Why would you put me in the Guardians of the Galaxy universe with a bunch of stereotypes, basically, right? Because the gay characters come off as extremely gay. You put a straight person and a gay person in a room, you shouldn't be able to tell the difference. Unless one of them is like diving into the stereotype. And with Concord, you could immediately like, oh, this person fits this archetype, this person fits this archetype, and that's just an immediate turn off from the game. You see that, it's like, okay, they're putting these characters in the forefront before the gameplay. They're talking about the story. They're talking about how there's going to be seasonal updates with like new story content. And you guys aren't showing me gameplay. So I see all of these token characters. You keep talking about how you're going to be updating the story and you're not showing me gameplay. You know what? That screams in my mind, woke garbage. I'm not even gonna play it. I didn't play it. I didn't go the early access. I haven't, like, I think the game is going for $40 now. It's going for free now. I'm still not gonna play it because all I can think about when I see Concord is woke.
In denial of sorts about the game's terrible player count after launch, wondering if it was even just a glitch or something. It's like it's impossible for some people to admit the issues with the character roster. And now practices such as DEI largely contributed to a number of issues with the game. Now, I'm not saying that all of the issues with Concord were simply DEI related. For example, the price point in the saturated market, sure, these were also contributing factors to Concord's massive failure, but when you see people ignoring the DEI related issues as well, it comes off as ignorant or bad faith. And for those that don't know, the person Paul Tassi was talking to in those screenshots.
I knew this wouldn't go well, but this is legitimately weird. Suicide Squad launched with 20x many players. The squad won established characters that people know, some love, I guess. A built universe that people actually know and want to explore. I don't think we've had a lot of chances to explore Metropolis, so I think a lot of people saw Suicide Squad as an opportunity to try out exploring Metropolis. Even though a lot of people thought the game was gonna be bad, a lot of people had hope that the game was going to be good, which is why it had 20 times the amount of players. However, we can all see how quickly that game died out as well. It's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. On her back.
In denial in their own way, claims to be affiliated with the Washington Post. Anyways, back to the current news with Ubisoft and Paul Tassi's takes on this stuff going on right now. He added this to his other tweet, saying, Outlaws could have starred a guy who looks like Han Solo, and Shadows could have starred a guy who looks like Jin Sakai, and I do not think it would meaningfully change the fortunes of either of those games. I think this would be a larger contributing factor to AC Shadows. Star Wars Outlaws has a number of other issues aside from people just not liking the MC. For example, a lot of people said that the gameplay was just boring, especially the stealth segments, which is a large part of the game, and that you didn't feel all that much like an outlaw. Like, you were very limited in the so-called immoral stuff that you could do in the game itself. Of course, there's also been numerous glitches, and these are just a few brief examples of some of the issues that people have with Star Wars Outlaws. But for
Yeah, I straight up saw people just falling through assets, right? Just falling through the desert all the way down and boom, nothing. Game resets. If this is supposed to be your big Star Wars thing where you're supposed to attract a new crowd, you are definitely not convincing anyone else to try your games. You could have given me an actual wanted system. You could have given me a Paragon versus Renegade system. There were so many things they could have done correctly, but decided to just, hey, let's put a chick there because that'll make people happy. Let's not polish the game. Let's not make sure the game crashes. If we just put a woman and we put Star Wars, that's going to be enough.
Paul Tassi to suggest that having an actual Japanese male lead for AC Shadows wouldn't meaningfully change the fortune of the game seems like an absolutely...
It would change a lot because people wouldn't be focusing on the character, they'd be focusing on the game, which could definitely give you guys better press. But instead, you guys fumble the bag, put a black guy there. Mind you, I am black and I would love to play as more black people in video games. You guys fumble the bag, you put a black person there, and now no one is paying attention to the game. Everyone's paying attention to the fact that you put a black person there instead of a Japanese person.
Insane thing to say. And once again, it also seems dismissive towards the issues that many people in Japan, many Japanese people, have with the game. It's really odd that Paul Tassi seems to have a recurring theme where he's very dismissive towards the issues that Japanese people have towards AC Shadows. I do think there's other issues that AC Shadows has. I mean, there's clearly other reasons why Ubisoft delayed the game. The probability of them changing Yasuke at this point seems near 0%. So there's probably other things that they're trying to polish.
I think them changing the protagonist now would probably cause more damage than anything, because people are going to be like, oh, So you could have just changed it at any time, but you needed us to lose our goddamn minds for you to change it? What's up with that, Ubisoft? So I think right now their best interest is just to stop addressing the matter. Ignore, drop the game, make sure it's as polished as possible. So like that the only thing people can complain about is the fact that Yasuke is black. Ignore the situation, polish the game, release, do not address.
Which also falls in line with the other parts of the statement that they made. Also, as I mentioned yesterday, there's also just a general negative perception and a loss of goodwill that Ubisoft has had, so perhaps they're going to try and spend the next few months trying to recover some goodwill at least before releasing AC Shadows. The point I'm making here is, there's other issues going on with AC Shadows besides just Yasuke, but again, Yasuke is certainly a huge factor. All of this leads us to an article that Paul Tassi wrote today for Forbes titled "After Assassin's Creed Shadows Delay, Ubisoft Acknowledges Outlaws Issue, Anti-Woke Pushback." It's funny that he complains about culture war stuff even when that label is oversimplifying the issues going on and is also, as I mentioned, rather dismissive towards the issues at large. But then he's also going to simultaneously write an article that's like, oh, it's just anti-woke pushback. Seems like this guy is actually propagating culture war stuff, if anything. The article goes over some of the stuff that we've already covered here in this video and others, so I'm skipping all that. And let's check out this section where he writes, "Then, Ubisoft surprisingly, tacitly acknowledged the narrative that its games have become too woke or agenda-driven, according to a segment of the internet." And posting that statement from Eves where he denies Ubisoft having any specific agenda. He then writes, "While Ubisoft already apologized to its Japanese audiences over some questionable promotional material on the internet." And posting that statement from Eves where he denies Ubisoft having any specific agenda. He then writes, "While Ubisoft already apologized to its Japanese audiences over some questionable promotional materials for Shadows, the pushback was also about the inclusion of Yasuke as one of the two leads, a legendary black samurai, where there was an ensuing debate of whether he was actually a samurai, and a stated idea that it shouldn't be starring him at all." It's pretty funny that despite all of the evidence coming out that Yasuke really wasn't conclusively a samurai, something that Ubisoft themselves has also admitted, here's Paul Tassi claiming he was not just a samurai, but a legendary one. He goes on to write, "There was similar pushback to Kay Vess leading Star Wars Outlaws as a woman, and a not attractive enough woman at that."
Here's the thing, okay? Look, quick, we're gonna exit the video real quick. Kay Vess, actress, model, face model, there we go. Look at her. Look at her. Look at this. This is what we had. This is what we could have gotten, and then they decided to. Why? You had this, and then you're like, you know what would make this better? If I just took a shit on it real quick before giving it to you all. You guys had a pot of gold in your hands, and then traded it for bronze. Fools. Sorry about that.
So he's really not going to mention that the main issue here was that Ubisoft made her less attractive. Like, they went out of their way to make Kay Vess less attractive than the actress that she's based on. Something that's very bizarre and certainly worth pointing out, but hey, Paul Tassi ain't going to mention that part here. He then says, no historical accuracy complaints there, as it was pretty straightforward woke/DI talking points there, but it is surprising to see Ubisoft entertain this at all. There's another article I found that has very odd coverage, to say the least, regarding all this Ubisoft.
You know, I think Assassin's Creed Shadows, what they should have done is they should have had the main protagonist be a historical Japanese man. And if they absolutely wanted Yasuke to be part of the game, they should have had Yasuke as the secondary character, where he's learning from the main protagonist. And then if you really want to shift to Yasuke, you have us play the tutorial as said Japanese person for X amount of time, and then maybe at a certain point of the game, you switch to Yasuke, or the Japanese samurai decides to forego his samurai ways and becomes a ninja instead. And then Yasuke takes up the mantle of samurai from his sensei. That would have been way better than what they're doing now, having Yasuke be the main lead as a samurai and a Japanese woman. I'm sorry, but in no reality is a 100-pound farmer, because most ninjas back then were farmers, is going to one leg kick a fully armored male samurai. That's just not happening. And I get it. It's a game. It's a game. But there's a certain amount of suspense of disbelief, right? I have no problems believing Spider-Man can jump over 20 cars because that's the world we're living in, right? But in Assassin's Creed, they're all regular humans. So you're asking people to, one, play as a woman, which a lot of people are not happy about, point blank period. I'm not going to beat around the bush. A lot of people are just upset that it's a woman. But a lot more people are upset because like you're messing Japanese history completely by making Yasuke a legendary samurai, which he was not. And then you're making the player base play as a ninja woman, which was also not historically accurate. So you can't really be upset at people for being mad at you.
Stuff. This one from fastcompany.com. The author Chris Morris writing, video game maker Ubisoft in chaos after anti-DEI backlash. The Assassin's Creed game maker delayed its biggest launch of the year, reduced forecasts, and is facing calls to sell in what is being called an incel victory. Okay, first of all, I haven't seen anyone say incel victory anywhere. Seems like this guy just made that up. And once again, I'll point out how these sort of people come off as such bigots, man. Dismissing the issues that Japanese people have with this game. Very reasonable and understandable issues. And then saying this is like an incel victory, seriously? These virtue signaler types are so hypocritical. And they're also just weird. I mean, who even talks like that? Oh, it's an incel victory. Like, either this guy made that up, or this must be some like terminally online Redditor talk here or something. Moving on. Because, spoiler alert, it's as bad in the article itself, or arguably even worse. He pulls out the classic, oh, the backlash is just from the far right.
The reason why it's called like an incel victory instead of just like a victory is because, one, it dehumanizes the people that are upset. Two, it also minimizes the anger of those people. Because it's like, oh, this person is angry. Okay, we should go address that situation. Oh, it's just a bunch of online incels that are mad. Oh, well, I don't really care. It's like it's a tactic to put the journalists in a higher position at the same time to minimize and devalue the other person's anger, emotions, and arguments.
My gosh, these people are boring with their rhetoric, saying the same nonsense for years and years and years, and they wonder why people don't listen to them anymore. Check it out. Right here he says, the bookings shortfall was technically due to the delay and disappointing sales of Star Wars Outlaws. However, the underlying reason for both of those, at least in part, is the far-right opposition to diversity and inclusion.
Well, why are the people that are not happy about the whole DEI situation buying the product? Right? Because if it's the far right, the issue, then you have another 50% of the country, of the people, that can go out and buy the game. Why is nobody going out and buying the game? If it's really a DEI issue, right? If that's the only issue, why are your people not buying the game? You take a second, think about it, let me know. You can give me a call, and when you're ready, we're gonna have that discussion.
Oh my gosh, what a joke. Yeah, diversity and inclusion, something that corporations love to gaslight people about. Oh, hey, we really care about this stuff. Not really. We just want money. But hey, if you criticize these corporations, you're apparently far right for criticizing corruption in corporations. He goes on to say, Outlaws, which has a female lead character, received mostly solid reviews from professional critics. Oh, professional critics. But many players gave it a 0 rating out of...
So the people that get the game for free by the company gave the game a good rating, but the people that had to use their hard-earned money to buy the game, so let's say you're working minimum wage. I don't know what minimum wage is in the US. Let's say it's $10. Okay, let's say you're being paid $10 an hour, and you want to buy this game, which is $70 plus tax. You have to do an entire 8-hour shift to buy that game. I'm gonna take that person's opinion 100 times more seriously than the person that got the game for free and is being paid to review it by the company that gave them the game. Think about that. Think about this.
10 on Metacritic, citing quote-unquote forced DI narratives and claiming the developers, quote, spent more time on the woke culture than on the story and gameplay, unquote. Some players were also unhappy with the optional Season Pass model that tacked an additional $40 onto the game's price for extra missions. The review bombing, driven by anti-DI backlash, seemingly worked and set off a chain of events that led to Wednesday's announcement. I forgot to mention this. In the intro of the article, he says, Ubisoft abruptly canceled its appearance at the Tokyo Game Show and postponed all press previews of the upcoming Assassin's Creed Shadows. Wednesday, we learned why. Anti-DI backlash has sent the company spinning. So for one, as funny as that is, there's also a lot more going on with Ubisoft than the anti-DI stuff. Like, for example, they've been mismanaged heavily for years. But leave it up to this so-called journalist veteran.
Yeah, fun fact, they're mismanaging the company so bad that they're launching an internal investigation because they are launching an internal investigation for real, but the going theory right now, or the going conspiracy theory, is that the Guillemot, whatever his name is intentionally making the stock value of the company go down so that his family can buy more shares so they can eventually take 100% control of the company. And with the way things have been going with Ubisoft, I understand why people believe in the conspiracy. I personally don't think... I'm like 70% sure it's not the reason why it's doing poorly, but just so you have an idea, the investors, so not the public, not the people, the investors are launching an internal investigation because of how bad things are going at the company. You do what you want to do with that information. That's where we're going to end the video today. Let me know what you think in the comments section down below. Is being against Ubisoft far right, or is Ubisoft just trash? While you're down there, like, favorite, share, and subscribe, because we're trying to hit 400 before the end of the month. And if you don't want to help, well, remember, at the end of the day, I'm just some guy on the internet, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace. If you want to see more of my face, be sure you click the video you see on screen right now.